You know what I mean? Because it's been a lot that you've been doing, a lot that you've been put through at this point with what's just recently happened. And so I want to get into it. I want to hear from you about what was going on. I want to get your take on. So let me put it to you like this. What I don't want you to do is anything you are not willing to talk about or speak on, that's not on the table. You know, this is your space to be able to say whatever you specifically want to and feel safe talking about in this setting. You know what I mean? And so, you know, I think some people know, they've seen in the local media that based on the sit-in that happened about, man, that was at the end of February, I think it was, you know. So
27th, I think.
Yeah. So we're cruising on like basically around about 2 weeks since that. And so you might have been listening in last show 2 weeks ago. We had some of the friends from Occupy Cal Poly in the building here in the Humboldt Hot Air Studio talking about that sit-in. And so big time shout out to them. I also want to hear from you because, I mean, obviously you were there too. I want you to talk about, if you're willing, you know, what, capacity you were there under, what you were seeing. I think we were all seeing some basically, I mean, I don't mean to be too harsh on them, but I'm looking at some administrators that are they were really, I mean, it's like, you know, it feels like you could kind of step on their toes and they're going to yelp. You know what I mean? That's what that's what I'm kind of seeing, man. But I don't want to get too far into my own thoughts and opinions looking at from the outside in. You were in there. You were in it. You were in the trenches. And so, yeah, brother, how did it go for you? You know, what did it look like for you?
Well, I mean, it's been crazy, first of all.
For real.
You know, I don't think, I mean, like, you always kind of expect that this sort of a thing could happen. You know, you're always kind of like waiting for that worst case scenario to occur, doing this kind of work, being an activist. But it just went from like 0 to 100 so quickly that I was, you know, caught off guard by how rapid the response was, how sharply it escalated this time. And, you know, the way it went down was really that, like, you know, I'm sure, you know, my friends who were here a week ago probably talked about this a bit too, but like there was a sit-in a week prior to this one, and that started as like a March for Palestine stuff, and then I think a decision was just kind of made on the fly, like let's just go in there and do a sit-in and get our demands met. And you know, they had demands ready. I think the initial thing was like, let's bring the demands to the admin, to their office, and drop it off there. But then it became a sit-in instead. And you know, at that, the administrators had agreed to have like negotiations in a public forum setting. Now, in the lead up to that, they emailed me personally and said, hey, by the way, we're going to move it to another location. It's going to be a listening session. It's going to be, and they're trying to change it without consent from any of the students who fought for that thing, you know?
On the fly, like.
Yeah. We'll just tell Rick. As if I have the power, first of all, to speak for other students, and also as if they can just do that, and it's just supposed to be okay, you know? Like,
right, because it was a group of people that drafted the Ethical Divestment Declaration?
Oh, yeah, the Ethical Investment Declaration. And
yes.
It includes divestment stuff in there, too. Absolutely. Yeah, so that was an STS initiative. There was a subcommittee that was put together towards the end of last semester to make that. But once we put it out there, then it became something that a lot of students were aware of who were involved in activism in various capacities. And they wanted that thing signed, you know, the pressure was there and the administrators were not taking it seriously. So that became a key demand at that point. You know, the demands were around like a true sanctuary campus, because right now, you know, the way it is on campus is that there are some groups, right, that I don't want to discredit. There are groups who are like working in their own capacity to create like rapid response type stuff and doing what they can. And then there's like the state laws and all that. And what the admin are kind of doing is they're kind of saying like, yeah, these other things are happening and we support those and we support the state laws, but we're not going to have like our own policy about it. And I think the demand was really like, we need to have a Humboldt specific policy about exactly what happens if ICE is here. Like exactly how are these students going to be supported? Exactly how are you going to protect them? What are the red lines and why? Like that stuff needs to be ironed out. And I think that was at the heart of the demand for that. And you know, when we're talking about state law changes. Other, you know, CSU policy changes, but we have power over what happens with the local stuff. And that's really what they were trying to do, is have some kind of local sanctuary campus thing going on. And then the other thing was like at the time you had various staff unions, including like the Teamsters and I believe like CSU EU and some others that were striking. They had a deal that was not like a bargain that had happened prior that was not being met by the CSU. And so one of the demands was like, you know, telling admin to advocate for them at the CSU level. And that's not a big ask, right? Just go and say, we stand with these workers. We think you need to pay them what you promised. It shouldn't be that hard.
Shouldn't even have to ask, really.
Yeah, they should just do it.
Right.
But, you know, unfortunately, that's just not how it usually works. So those were the demands, and in the lead up, they kind of tried to, you know, change what it was. They even had associated students post something. They made them do this. I know they made it because I know people in AS. They made them post something with their narrative on it and changing the location in an attempt to use associated students to circumvent like what we had planned with them. They thought that they could do that, but they didn't realize that SCS has way more reach and influence than even AS at this point. So it was not successful. They couldn't get away with it.
Seems like, I mean, and on a real quick side note, you know, because I just remember seeing in it was either the Lumberjack and El Lenador, the situation with the couple of friends that got kicked out or basically kicked out of AS for basically trying to hold it down and make sure that people were getting paid for their work that they were doing. And they were like, yeah. And so it seems like the administration is definitely, you know, extending that claw into AS without a doubt, which is so messed up. Like, that's by the students for the students, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. What we really need is like a true student government with power. And we need it to be, in my opinion, incorporated within the actual university system and not like this is a nonprofit org that represents you or whatever that we have our claws in, but like this is a built-in part of this institution with secured powers and checks and balances. But, you know, we're so far from that right now. You know, they're running the CSUs like corporations at this point, very top-down kind of governance.
100%.
So it's unfortunate. But that's something, you know, that we've also talked about fighting for a really long time. It's been on our radar. Yeah, and I know there's like, you know, YDSA has been talking about like a true student union to try to fight for things like that. And there's a lot of ideas going around, I think, because students are concerned about these things. But so we meet at this public forum, right? And like I showed up a little late. Thank God someone woke me up because I've been so burnt out. I was supposed to be there right away, and my alarm didn't go off. I don't know if it didn't go off or if it was one of those moments, you know, where you wake up and you turn it off without realizing, and you just don't remember. It was one or the other. But I got a call, and they're like, "Rick, where are you?" So I just hopped out of bed and like rushed over there. And by the time I got there, it seemed like kind of what was happening was like the admin were just having like free reign to talk at students, basically. And so I came in and I started trying to talk to them about the demands and stuff. And they just kept, it was like carefully crafted non-answers, just like reiterating like, this is what our policy is. And just not answering the actual demands, not addressing what was really being demanded of them. And just like trying to like circumvent any of the evidence or information that was presented to them. And it continued to escalate. You know, a lot of students showed up. There were a lot of students who showed up masked and stuff already because they were people who, you know, either were involved in the sit-in the week before and were scared, you know, the admin was going to have like repercussions, you know, for them, rightfully so. You know, look what they're doing to me right now. And or they were just like worried about admin in general because it just has not been a safe place to speak your mind on campus for some time now. And I think that you can really see that when you've got a lot of students covering their faces to speak their mind. But a lot of them, were making really good points, and there was someone there, one of their financial officers or whatever, I can't remember his name, but he had brought like a graphic out, and it showed like the ethical investment thing over time, and there's this spike in divestment that happens, and he was trying to parade that around, and I go, oh, when did that happen? Oh, right after the occupation of Siemens Hall? Is that? And I point, like, isn't that right where this was? And I point to the change, and then it plateaus again. And I'm like, see, well, isn't that amazing that all of a sudden you decided to do that right when the students.
The occupation.
Yes, it was because of the occupation, and that's student power right there. And they were trying to take credit for it and be like, look how great we are, Look at what we did. And it was like, no, the students forced you to do that, and then you stopped again, and you haven't been making progress since that spike, and that's why we're here now. And it's really so that was one of the highlights, I'd say. But people got upset, right? And ultimately the administrators, a lot of them left early. They just started to disappear until all that was left was Mike Fisher. He's like associate vice president of like finance or something. But he used to be the head of facilities, but he got a promotion with the new president, and he started being like, all right, I'm just going to call it at 9:30. He's like, that's what we agreed on. It's like, no, you said till 10, and you haven't met any of the demands yet. We haven't negotiated at all yet. So he just like dips out, right? So everyone starts like marching into the quad, and a sit-in starts in the quad. And I think the main reason why they didn't go back into like Siemens Hall or anywhere else was because all the buildings had been locked down in that area by the administrators preemptively, because they didn't want anyone to go in there, obviously, and they knew that this had been built on a sit-in previously, so they had that idea already that we're not going to meet these demands, and they're probably going to try to do another sit-in.
Oh wow, they had a plan ready to go.
Yeah, exactly. And so I'm out there in the quad with them at this point, and basically what happened was some of the students were like, hey man, would you be down to go and print flyers and let people know and spread the word that we're out here in the quad right now doing this? And I was like, yeah, of course. So like I run to the library, I'm working on flyers, I'm working on graphics, I'm sending out messages to people. And the next thing I know, I get an alert that they have moved into Nelson Hall. And I guess, there was an opportunity that presented itself. Someone had like opened the door, and they just happened. They're right there in the quad, so they can see it, and they were able to get in there. And then that led into the sit-in and the occupation of like Goodwin Forum until their demands were met in Nelson Hall. Yeah, so it really escalated because, and it's important to note, like, this has been going on for so long now. Like, it's been, like, years now where we've been making demands of the administration, we've been meeting with the administration, we've been negotiating with the administration, and they just don't budge an inch on most of these issues, and they just give you empty promises. They try to wear you down in bureaucracy. They try to just waste your time, and eventually it comes to a head where it's like, okay, well, people aren't doing that anymore, so we're going to demand better of you. And I think that's what's happened here, and they're trying to play it off like, oh, it was just this small group of like students who are extreme or whatever. It was this dangerous criminals, blah blah blah. But in reality, this is a buildup of students becoming extremely irritated and tired with administration that just does not care and does not listen to them. Yeah. And, so they're so willing to use their money, to oppress people in Palestine, to fund war, and they just don't really care, to have an inaccessible campus. And something that's, and I'm jumping ahead a bit here, but I think it's important to note this right now. Something that's really, really important here is that they say they don't have money for accessibility. They say they don't have money for all these things we've been fighting for. But what is the first thing that they did after this? They hired private security. They had all the money in the world for private security. And what did the private security do? Started racially profiling students, started harassing students. Like, what are we doing? What are we doing?
That's thousands of dollars right there. If it's multiple people, that's thousands of dollars.
Yes. Yep. And they're all getting paid. There's tons of people there. And it speaks to the university's priorities. And the other thing is that the new president, he has not shown his face once since this all happened. He is just like in the shadows. And it's like, where are you, man? Where are you? The students are making demands. The students are out here protesting, and you're nowhere to be found. And you just send the police and private security and your administrative goons to come and clean up the mess. Like, what kind of man are you? You know?
Yeah, that's wild. And so he hasn't showed his face at all on the campus, basically.
He hasn't been around since like the first week. You know, he did his little PR tour and then he disappeared.
Wow. That is bad news, because that just lets you know that's obviously not a person of the people. No. You know what I mean? He's definitely not representing the students very well, or even more important, listening to them.
Yeah.
Which is his job.
Yup. It should be.
Yeah, you know?
I mean, but the way that, the CSU Board of Trustees looks at it, they look at it, I think, as like the president's job is to maintain order with an iron fist and get that money to them and their wallets. That's what we're all seeing, I think, is just like, the
corporatizing of our state public educational institutions,
Yeah.
As fascism rolls and creeps further and further against us, they're rolling right alongside with it.
Yep, 100%. Yeah.
It's so interesting, and one of the things that I heard a friend say, and he said it so eloquently, but one of my friends was saying that the encampments for Palestine on campuses across the country were basically the North Star of anti-imperialist activism over the last few years. Like it was the students guiding the way for all of us, and it has been met with the most serious repression that we've seen in years. And so, with that being said, and again, I said it last show when the couple other people from Occupy Cal Poly were in the building and talking, but rather than doing the right thing, rather than the administrators, it's a personal choice how you're going to operate. And if you're just going to fall in line and take orders like the military, would like a soldier would do, you know what I mean? Like you have a sphere of influence as an employee of the university. And so it just takes like a few of the employees. And I know that I know some of the employees at Cal Poly Humboldt, some of the staff administrators that are actually good people that have good hearts. And so it just takes a few of them to stand up and say, I don't know about this. Like, this is not right. We should be doing what's right. Because if you look at it on the flip side of things, let's just look at a couple other different situations out there in the public sphere. You've got, let's say, in the music industry, because this is Hip Hop Humboldt Radio, so we look at the music industry. So you'll have these people that work for these corporations that will reduce opportunities for musicians because of speaking up for Palestine. And I even just put it in my stories on Instagram in the last 24 hours. It was LaRussell who it was less than 2 years at this point, but he spoke out against what was happening, in Palestine to the Palestinians, pro-Palestinian. And, and so he just had an interview where he was like, like some CFO from some company, they were trying to give me some opportunities, but the CFO of that company said they don't really like me speaking out and representing, saying positive things about Palestine. And he was just like, well, then I don't need those opportunities. It's like, that's what we really need, on their side, the people that are, whether you're pro-Zionist or pro-status quo, those people speak out. They use their sphere of influence to say, oh, this is how I think things should be. We need good people doing the same thing, especially on a local level at our public, more than just public, our public educational institutions, where you have quite a sphere of influence amongst students, younger folks that are seeing this and needing to see proper leadership.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. We really need more of that. We need more people on the inside who are willing to say something and fight back. And, there was even, it's so bad now, I remember in 2024, there was someone, I think they were the associate dean of students or something like that at the time. They were like the lower dean of students, not the higher. There's two positions in it, and they resigned because of everything that happened then, and like they were just like, I'm out, I'm done with this. And that's what happens, I think, to a lot of the good people, is they end up getting so bogged down that they're just like, I'm just gonna leave now, I'm just done with this. And I think, actually, I think you make a good point that you're right, that it's actually better to like fight in there, use your voice, and if you're going to resign, do it in a very public way. Talk to the media about it, explain exactly why, explain what your stance is, make a big point of it, because we really need those voices out there right now. And I think even with this situation, the voices that are getting amplified in this now against me, the ones who have filed these declarations against me, they're the yes men. They are the administrators who will do whatever it takes for a bigger raise, do whatever it takes to get more money. Maybe I hurt their fragile egos in some way, and now they're getting revenge and a bigger paycheck. But we need a counter to that. We need the people who are willing to fight back from within. And God, and to get back to like what happened, so students are in there, and I'm supporting from outside, right? I was talking to media, explaining what's happening, spreading the word. And there were people who showed up with like food and supplies and water for the students. And this was around the same time that I learned that the staff had locked the bathrooms in the building. So students are putting up signs like on the windows, like they locked the bathrooms, we have nowhere to go. And so I came over and went up to one of the facilities people. I was like, you need to unlock the bathrooms if you don't want them to, be just peeing on the wall or the carpet. Like, what are you thinking? This is unsanitary. And, I was telling him off for that. And around that time, I got frustrated, just walked off, and he like left too. And then shortly after, there were people who showed up with like food and water, and they were trying to walk in. And then I see these two staff members who were put there by the administration, like physically barring them from entering with their bodies, like pushing them, shoving them, like checking them with their shoulder and stuff, and just getting in their face.
Literal assault against students.
Yep, 100%. And that, was extremely upsetting. And I'm like, dude, they're trying to bring like food and water, and what are y'all doing? Like, we were told we can't let anybody in. I'm like, yeah, well, you also can't physically touch students either. Like, that's illegal, And then I went and I like made like a sort of like a T formation and stood in front of them, like slowly just went in front and did not touch them. And
literally to de-escalate.
Yeah, to be like a shield between like the people walking through and these very aggressive staff members. I just used my body as like a barrier between those two forces. And it's important to note, they could walk away. They had plenty of room to walk away on either side. I was not keeping them there. I was literally just shielding these people to walk through so they don't get pushed or like blocked. And, I let them through. I went back down. During that time, one of the guys kind of pushed into me a bit, but I didn't budge, and then I just moved back down. And that's that moment right there is what, the university is like making this big deal out of. They saw their golden goose and they think that they can run with it. And they're like, oh, it was assault, it was battery, false imprisonment. And the crazy thing is, one, they were the ones who were aggressively manhandling students. I did not, I didn't do any of that. I was not aggressive with them. I had my back to them. I was not touching them. I was not keeping them anywhere. But what's crazy about it is, then the way that this whole thing ended later that night was with police then getting called to once again aggressively demand students leave with the threat of the use of force and serious bodily injury. So it's like it's a recurring thing where the administrators are fine using violence as a threat or a tactic against students, but then like the second that they even feel like they might be able to cobble together some case of this to use against the students, they'll do that. And it doesn't even have to be a real thing. It doesn't even have to be something that happened. They think that if they can all unite behind this story, and if they can try to misidentify what happened together, then it'll succeed. And that's just not realistic. And I think they're grossly underestimating the fact that there were a lot of witnesses there. There are a lot of people who saw what happened, including a legal observer. And those witnesses, by and large, are not on their side. I think there's like one person who has taken their side, and it was the same reporter who wrote a hit piece on the protest. So not a reputable person, somebody who is very biased. I
think I know who you're talking about. Yeah.
So all the neutral forces that were there are like, that's definitely not what happened. They're reiterating my story. So I think they're going to find it's very difficult to actually get away with something like that. But it also just speaks to like how slimy they are and shady they are.
Yep.
You know, they'll do whatever it takes. And when you get down to what happened to me most recently, that really shows in full force, right? Like, so what happened? First, they sent these suspensions. They targeted an RA who had nothing to do with the protest, and he temporarily lost his job. He was moved to some kind of temporary housing away from all of his things and held there. And then eventually, they lifted everything, but they like messed with this person for like a week, wrongly. Someone who wasn't even associated with the protest, and then. They also went after another student as well with suspensions and everything. And then me. And I got, just sweeping charges, suspension. They said that I assaulted someone. And then, a couple days later, I'm at home, I'm in my bed, I'm with my cats, I'm just resting, getting ready to fall asleep. It's like 1 a.m., so I'm up a little late. And all of a sudden, I just hear this loud banging on my door. And I just knew right away. It was not the kind of banging that you hear unless the police are at your door. And I knew right away. I was like, it's going to be UPD. It's going to be, they're trying to pull something on me right now. So I went down to the stairs and I was like, do you have a warrant? And they were like, yeah, we have a warrant. And then they start banging my door like they're going to knock the thing down. So I run downstairs. I open it up and, I see the warrant, and then they grab me and pull me out and just start arresting me, ripped my shirt, just real aggressive at first. It took them a minute to realize I wasn't a threat and to calm down. I think they thought they were in like an action movie or something, This was their big moment. I'm just like, dude, can y'all calm down,
Right.
It's not that serious. But they, they bring me to the station and they read off all these charges, these all felonies. They're like, you got felony assault, felony battery, felony wrongful imprisonment, felony conspiracy to commit a crime. And they're like, and we got a warrant here for you and stuff. We're bringing you to jail. So they bring me to jail. And the whole time I'm just like, that's crazy because I didn't do any of that, I'm like, that's crazy that you can do that when I'm innocent. Right. But I get to the jail and I'm expecting a bail to be posted. And they're like, no bail. No bail on this Ramey warrant. And I just, for people listening, like a Ramey warrant, and I just learned this through this experience, but a Ramey warrant is a super messed up warrant. It's a warrant that can be used if the DA is considering filing something against you. So let's say, like in my case, UPD has it out for me, and the admin do too, right? They scheme it up. They come up with these inflated charges, this grand story about how I'm a terrorist or whatever, and then they send it to the DA. The DA looks and goes, wow, this might be a really bad guy, we got to consider filing charges. Yeah, I'll sign this Ramey warrant to get him in jail right away to make sure people are safe. It's basically to be like an urgent measure if someone is a high risk to society. If there's a high risk of them harming someone or doing something terrible, then they throw them in jail right away, and then they can hold them there for 48 hours while they file charges. Now, the caveat to this is weekends don't count, holidays don't count. So they love to come on a Friday morning, 1 a.m. on Friday like they did to me, because then they can hold you for the weekend and 2 additional days. And you don't even have to be guilty of anything. You can be held there. Yeah. So that's what they did to me. And they were planning to keep me there until Tuesday is what I kept being told, until I could see a judge on a Tuesday. And then all of a sudden, there were people calling nonstop from all around the country, just blowing up the phone lines on the DA's office, the jail, nonstop. And
shout out to the allies.
Yeah, shout out to everybody who united around that and who called in, because it worked. Because all of a sudden on Sunday morning, they were like, we got bail for you, get out of here. And when I got down there, when I was leaving jail, I'd been there Friday to Sunday, and when I was leaving, I got down and they're like, hey, you're Rick Toledo? And I was like, yeah. And they're like, can you tell everyone you're free now? They need to stop calling us.
That's how you know it worked.
Yep.
You know, when the people come to the table for the people, you know?
100%.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
I'm glad that all the allies, all the friends, you know, came together to put it to them, you know, like, and it makes sense, you know what I mean? Like they, you know, their phone was ringing nonstop, which for them, I mean, on some kind of level, you know, they have to like answer the calls because they have to figure out who's calling and what the deal is, right? And so at some point, like probably pretty quickly, they probably got tired of the people calling. And if you just still keep pounding them, and I remember seeing it, man, I saw it, you know, like on social media, like there were the people that were like, call, please, keep calling, call them, you know what I mean? And it has to be numbers. It has to be numbers showing up, you know what I mean? Because if it was just like, let's say like a handful of people, then they can just, well, you know, that's not a nuisance to them. But it's when the phones are ringing nonstop and they have to pick them up because they have to be responsive, like they're, you know, yeah, that made it happen. That's so awesome because I was looking, you know, at things from my perspective too, and I'm like, man, it feels like they are going to try to keep you in there till like Tuesday, man. You know what I mean? I'm so glad that, you know, like the people basically made it happen, you know?
Yeah, no, it was a huge relief, and I'm super grateful and thankful for that. And it shows, you know, what the power of the people can do. You know, it's really like the other part of this too is, you know, like the jail and the courthouse out here and all of that. Like they remember 2024. They remember the 30 plus charges that had to be dropped for lack of evidence from Cal Poly Humboldt. They remember getting national calls at that point too. And here they are again, and they probably still have a bad taste in their mouth. And now they're like, wait a minute, this isn't actually some super aggressive dude. This is a political case again. Cal Poly Humboldt's putting us through this again. It's like, get this guy the hell out of here, you know? So it's really like putting that pressure on, it really demonstrates that, no, this is not just what it looks like. This actually is something else. And it lets them all know that. And then it puts that pressure on to overwhelm them and just make them want to get you out of there. It's like, I don't want to deal with this anymore.
Yeah.
And it's good to have more eyes on it, you know. It's always a good thing. So, yeah, it was a whole thing though, you know, getting thrown in jail wrongly for crimes I didn't commit. You know, they did it on purpose. It was the way that I see it is it was meant to intimidate me, it was meant to scare me, and it was meant to put fear into all of the other students too. Like, look what we'll do to you if you speak up. We can do whatever we want, you know. We can invent felony charges and we can take you down. But that's just not true, you know. Yeah, you can make me stay in jail for a few days, but you can't keep me there. You know, you can do that, but and when I'm out, guess what? You're going to be in trouble because now, you know, the whole media is going to know what's up as this case drags out, and as you become defeated in court, and as it becomes so clear that you made this up and that you exaggerated these things, you're going to get all the bad press. You're going to get all the heat, and the people are going to be pissed, and they're already pissed. So it's like,
and then invigorated when the charges get dropped, because they will have the hardest time ever. It's literally impossible for them to prove felony assault and battery based on the pictures that were even posted in all the local media outlets. Not gonna happen. And so that's a two-pronger, because they're gonna look stupid for bringing those charges up. People will remember this, and then the people will feel invigorated that, you know, we won, that you won, that we won. You know what I mean? Like, that's good. And so it goes back to from 2 years ago, from the folks that were the brave ones that stayed till the very end of the basically, I would say, like, basically the last protest, where they were all sitting in a circle. Shout out to some of our, you know, mutual homies, you know, that got arrested and all of them had multiple charges. There was a lot of charges getting thrown around, right? Mm-hmm. And every single person got out of there without charges in the end of it all.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? All the charges got dropped, you know? So like you just said, you know what I mean? Like these local law enforcement, it's like, oh man, we're have to do this again, you know? And it's UPD that's, you know, kind of like wrangling all this and everything like that. And then they're the one, UPD doesn't have, maybe they do have like some sort of, I don't think they have like a jail. Maybe they have like some holding rooms or something like that.
Yeah, probably something like that.
I think something
but
like
not
that.
A jail,
but not a jail. Yeah, it's the sheriffs here locally that, you know, handle the jail, and so they're the ones that have to, you know, they're the ones that have to deal with all the calls, and so you would hope at least that they would like not be happy about it and would be, you know, like letting UPD know, like, we don't want to do this again. Like, stop doing this. Stop. Yeah. You know what I mean? Which is going to be an extra layer of insulation from UPD and the administrators repressing the rights of students.
Oh,
you know?
Yeah. You know, there's already there's already been multiple things that have come out too after 2024 of like a lot of the, you know, like Eureka PD and other police departments, they're not down to like respond to like calls from UPD. A lot of them in the same way anymore after what happened, because it just left a bad taste in their mouth when it comes to student protesting.
Yeah.
They're like, that was a mess.
We don't want to be the guys on the face of this. Yeah. You know?
And you know, I don't have a whole lot of sympathy for the police. I'm gonna be real with you. But,
I feel you.
But it is interesting to see those divisions between them, you know, intensifying over these things. It just goes to show how bad UPD is at their jobs. You know, they're just so all over the place and corrupt, and you know, now there are like all these new demands coming out within the university. Like, we need a police oversight committee, like we need a real one, like, you know, faculty and student power in it, and that's become a real push right now because of like all of the corruption that's being exposed in UPD as a result of this. The way that they went about this, you know, they abused their power, like obviously and openly, and the media is all over it. And also something else, they started to try to get student information from faculty members, which is against FERPA.
Right.
And that's something that they recently did, and it was brought up at the university senate, at the most recent senate. So it's like UPD is up to no good, and they're getting no oversight. They're doing whatever they want. It's like, it's time something happens with that, you know. Mm-hmm. They shouldn't be allowed to kidnap a student from his home. They shouldn't be allowed to harass, faculty members for student information. Like, these are just things that should never be happening. So
right. 100%. That's so wild. You know, those officers are paid for by the students, students' tuition and student money, just like all of, you know, our public tax dollars pays for the police. It's students funding this, and so that is one of the last, lines of defense that should be doing harm to students. You know, it's completely wild to me, man. I'm just so glad that it all went down in a positive fashion in terms of you getting out of there early, and now there's the aftermath to deal with, because you lost your job, and correct me if I'm wrong on any of it, right? But you lost your job, and so that is direct material distress that you have been put under, that they placed upon you with their actions, with these charges, and with this whole process that's gone down. They have, the way I've seen it, because I'm not, I'm just repeating what I saw, what I read in local media outlets, whether it was Lost Coast Outpost or Redheaded Black Belt. Mm-hmm. I'm looking at these statements from, specifically, they noted the name, Cal Poly spokesperson Aileen Yu, who made this statement that she was scared that you were going to return to campus to seriously injure students or faculty. That is, I'm not the judge in this. That's literally like slander against your character, because I feel like she should absolutely have had some kind of precedent of you committing serious injury to anybody to say, I feel he was going to do this. Like, that's just like saying, oh, like, I've never met you before in my life, just me walking up to a random person, but I think you're going to seriously injure somebody. Like, it's just out of nowhere, out of thin air. And that was what was posted in the public forum, in these public media outlets locally that thousands of people read. And so that is slander against your character. Mm-hmm. And so I really hope that there are repercussions against the university for the whole thing, but especially some of these key points that like they need to know. They cannot just use these, because what it really amounts to is, it's like criminals commit some crimes, and then when the police come after them, then they're like, all right, we got to get our story straight. Or it's the same thing on the flip side of the table. When the authorities commit wrongs, and then there's going to be repercussions against them, they say, okay, we got to get our story straight. You know what I mean? Like that's how like how it went. You know what I mean? It was like I'm there to like support you in case somebody like blows on you. I'm gonna say that's assault. You know what I mean? And that's what happened. And then it was like they set it up like that. The administration sent the most chip on your shoulder minded people to go out there to basically assault the students, because that's the other point. In addition to your character being disparaged in the public forum, the way I see it, and based on how you're explaining it to me, you were assaulted. Not the other way around. So there's that to have some kind of some repercussions for. And so this is, you know what I mean? And at this point now, so I agree with you that this was all about intimidation and trying to scare other students from doing what's right and actually holding the line for pushing properly towards some completely reasonable but good goals. Divestment, and not even like, and that was just one of the three. The other two being, like you were explaining earlier, pushing for a sanctuary policy on campus, and then just supporting the union of the Teamsters that were already, I think they were striking. Yeah, they were striking, and so like just supporting them, and so it's like, it's just wild to me that rather than saying, all right, you know what I mean, like we don't want this to go in the bad direction, and we're going to honor what the Teamsters want. The sanctuary policy, again, I said it on the last show, but like there's a lot of immigrant or just, people of color on campus that would be targeted if DHS, comes up here and ICE comes up here and everything like that and starts doing operations. There would be students on campus that would be targeted. And so that's a completely reasonable demand. And then the demand to divest, it's just 1% that the students and that the community's asking for Cal Poly to divest. And which just lends to it being that much easier. It's like you can't really get, less than 1%. You can get a fraction of 1%, but like 1% is as low as you can go. You know what I mean? It's not like the students are like, okay, 50% of this $54 million portfolio is all invested in Raphael or BAE Systems or Lockheed or Lockheed Martin or Boeing. It's like it's 1%. Like that's literally like, a pen can just remove however many handful, if that, funds from the portfolio, and then it's done. Yeah. Oh, and even it could be, the funds could be like, I don't know if it can be, but my thought is like, if you can't even divest away from those, just liquefy it, sell it, and then use that money for students. They're going to end up needing to have to recompensate. I feel, and I'm hoping and praying that they recompensate you for what's happened, and they also recompensate the other students that were wronged in this, and actually spend some kind of funds trying to fix this at large with the student body. Not even to save face. I don't care about them saving face. It's about doing what's right.
Yeah, 100%. Yep.
And so so they rather than going the right way, they went the wrong way, which is going to end up backfiring on them hard.
Oh, yeah, big time. And, like, if you look at these declarations that you were touching on against me, one, There's one in there that's literally from someone who wasn't even there at all, right? So it's Raven Craig. She's like the interim dean of students right now. She wrote a scathing thing about like what a monster I am, and she even called me a drug and alcohol addict upon fact and belief, which basically means I think so. So it's like this is just straight defamation. Like this is a straight up smear campaign. This is straight up like an assassination of my character at times. Lucky for me, people know me in the community. People know what I'm about. Like if you know me and you already hate me, then you probably weren't feeling my political views in the first place, which no worries. But like for the vast majority of people, like they are in support of these political views, you know? So it's like it's just they're trying to target someone with slander and defamation that people know. And I think that's the strength of being known, right? There's risks with being known, and obviously, like, they know where I live. They can send cops to my house. They can send these charges against me. But also, like, the people know who I am. They know what I'm about. They know that I'm not some, like, you know, crazy, dangerous, like, terrorist. I'm not some, like, you know, and I don't even want to say, like, you know, there are people who have addiction issues who are great people. So I'm not even going to talk bad about that, you know, like, but am I? No, I'm not addicted to drugs and alcohol. Does that define someone's character? Hell no, it does not define someone's character either. So it's just a bad look. It's like what a terrible thing to say, you know. And then when you get into like the divestment thing, something that was kind of like a slap in the face too for I think me and the rest of the students was that one of the things on the investment declaration was Brown. That was one of the funds that we asked them to divest from. One of the, I think it was like 4 or 5, right? And like they had a finance meeting during the negotiations, right? Or with it wasn't because of the negotiations. That foundation meeting was already happening that day. Mm. So they went there and then they divested from Brown, right? But I was in the meeting and they basically said Brown is not performing well financially, blah, 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 whatever. So it wasn't a result of like the demands. It wasn't from the pressure. It was literally just, this isn't making us that much money. And something I want to highlight with that is like, it was so easy for them to divest from it when it wasn't profitable for them. So easy. So they could just as easily divest from these things because of the unethical aspects of them, just as easily. But they choose not to again and again. And it's really just a slap in the face. It's like, and they tried to bring that back to the students and be like, look what you did. Look what we gave you. And it's like, no, that's not what happened. And if anything, this just exposes you even more.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. And that is such a crucial part for people to know, because if people don't hear that it was that Brown was dropped as a fund because it was underperforming, they will have gotten their plan, their scheme pushed through in the minds of the people and in the public forum and them creating and maintaining that narrative that they're giving the people what they want. They're acquiescing to the student demands when in actuality they weren't listening at all, you know? That's so crazy to me. Yeah. Like, it's just, you know, and it's interesting too, that, you know, and I'm glad for the students. I'm glad for SDS. I'm glad for the YDSA and the students that are even not a part of those groups, but, you know, activating alongside the groups, because, you know, I like to, you know, hit on the sanctuary policies again. Shout out to you guys for holding it down and demanding that, because, you know, we're seeing, I mean, you know, it's kind of like, you know, the media in this country is kind of going in like waves with how much they're reporting on ICE and DHS and what they're doing. And you know what I mean? And I feel like right now, especially, you know, I think that there's just a lot going on in the world, period. You know what I mean? Like, they're really not reporting on it a whole lot. And so, but I'm seeing now, like, I've seen videos like as recent as the last few days, like ICE is operating in full force in Vermont. Mm-hmm. Like, and so you got to think about that. So I'm not, you know what I mean? I don't know everything. And so I don't know exactly what the demographics of Vermont looks like. But I would just, on just general assumption, presume or assume that there is a larger immigrant population in California, even as far north as we are, than like Vermont potentially. And so if they're full-fledged operating in Vermont, like, you know what I mean? Like, it shows that they're not, like, that entire machine is not slowing down. And why? And I'm praying, you know, I'm hoping they don't come up here, you know, because we can't just say, like, I don't even like hearing, like, talking to the people that say, well, eventually they are. That may be the reality. Obviously, that may be the reality. But they're not here yet, praying and hoping that they don't come up here. But if they do, there will be a lot of my friends that will be harassed, our mutual friends, our students on campus that will be not just harassed, but targeted, literal, straight up arrested, potentially families ripped apart. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so, like, shout out to you guys because, you know, other than like there's the people that are supporting. We know about Central del Pueblo, and they have a rapid response network. Thank goodness for that. You know what I mean? But like, what other groups other than Central del Pueblo and SDS and the YDSA, what main groups are advocating? And so I don't want to say this to like demoralize anybody that actually is activating against ICE locally and forming, you know, networks, you know, because shout out to all of those people doing that. But like on the forefront of the work, the people that have spoken out most and are doing the most work, at least as what I'm seeing, is the YDSA, SDS, and Central del Pueblo. You know what I mean? And so shout out to you guys, because without that, I mean, then it's like Central del Pueblo alone, and then there's the people with good hearts that are trying to actually support the Rapid Response Network and the work that Central del Pueblo's doing. It's like there's a good-sized immigrant population up here, you know? And so those are vulnerable people that we gotta, you know, take care of. And it seems like what was interesting for me, and I don't know if it's just people kind of like just being led by the mainstream media or what have you, but like, you know, when Nicole Good and Alex Peretti were murdered, assassinated by ICE. You know, that was like a scary moment. Like it was like a real moment. Like it's like everybody in the country was like, "What the F is this?" You know what I mean? And then there was a lot of, you know, I went to a Humboldt Solidarity Coalition meeting down at the Labor Temple. That was probably about a month ago when that, you know, around about when all that went down, and there was palpable, you know. In addition to palpable fear, there was also palpable want to do something locally to prevent this from happening to our community. You know what I mean? And I don't know whether it's, you know what I mean, just like I said, you know, with the media, things kind of like, you know, wane with the media coverage of things, and so it kind of goes outside of people's minds and everything like that. It was SDS and YDSA that literally brought it back to the table for the local community by demanding a sanctuary policy on campus. So shout out to you guys, big time.
Yeah, I think it's important that we keep bringing this back to the forefront of the media, and even Palestine too. You know, Palestine's another thing where a lot of people have just it's disappearing out of like the main conversation for a lot of people and in the media. And it's like we really need to bring that attention back. And I think, you know, there's a lot of debates about diversity of tactics. Some people, you know, they don't like as confrontational of an approach, but like something I always say is like you have to have your fighters. You have to have people who are willing to fight and to actually take the action to bring those things back to the forefront, to push against the people in power. And you also have to have the other people who are organizing like community networks and other forms of resistance and support. Like there has to be this collaboration between the different forces, and that's something that I think is crucial. I think if we don't have fighters, if we don't have people who are willing to take chances and do radical actions and get attention on these things, then we run the risk of not being prepared when things come to us. We run the risk of, did we do enough? Did we prepare enough? Did we push the people in power enough? Were there enough eyes on this still? Did the media move away from it? And now we're getting raided, and there's a lot of people who are just caught off guard. There's no militant network set up. And that's something that I really hope that we can build here in preparation, because it is getting worse. It's getting worse all over the country. And I think there's like a lot of like collaboration that can occur, and a lot of like I don't know, just a lot of there's a lot of energy still, and I think it can be used towards building a really strong and unified community here against ICE and against the far right overreach of Trump and his goons, and that's something that I hope that we can influence here, and I believe strongly that taking this action is an important step towards that, and I stand with Palestine, I stand with with the immigrant movement nationally against ICE. I stand with all people against ICE. I stand with the workers who are struggling to get their fair share. And I think that those demands, they speak to most people. And I think it's important to bring those things to the forefront. And I know even with the staff on campus, when we were, marching the first time on the 20th, we marched right up to the strikes and we changed to union chants when we went there. And they were excited and supportive, and they went on interviews and said, we wanted to join the students. That's the kind of solidarity. When you have these militant actions happen, that's the moment. That's when everyone should unite around that thing and push for more. That's when you can get your demands met. Because what people in power like to do around those moments is they like to sow dissent and turn people against each other and be like, well, they shouldn't be speaking about this thing for these reasons. Or oh, well, and they try to create these narratives that turn people against each other. And really what we need in those moments is there's a tension on this now. Let's get everybody together. Let's make some momentum here. And I hope there can be more of that sort of a thing,
I completely agree with you. That's the solidarity that we really need in this moment. Let me really quickly here break in and do the station identifier here at the top of the hour from Playhouse Arts. This is KHHALP Arcata 94.7 FM, community forward radio, broadcasting from the heart of the Creamery District in Arcata. I have Rick Toledo joining me here on the Hip Hop Humboldt radio show on Humboldt Hot Air. Thank you for tuning in. You're probably tuning in via either 94.7 FM or on the web at humboldthotair.org. Humboldt Hot Air also has an app that you can use to tune in. You can even use other platforms like Radio Garden to tune into a bunch of different internet streaming radio stations across the globe. But shout out to y'all for tuning in. And we've had a good conversation so far, breaking into this second hour with Rick Toledo here. And I completely agree with you. Solidarity is the only real way to actually, protect ourselves on a foundational basis. Without solidarity, they have what they want. They have us in these all tribed off, where it's easy to suppress, pick one tribe, and let me be careful with my language. It's just a matter of pick one demographic, one group of people, and target each one systematically when it gets a whole lot harder to target just a mass of people coming together along different lines of common shared values, And we saw it. We really did the last time, at least I saw it in a meaningful way, was 5 years ago during the Floyd insurrection. There was a multiracial, multi-generational movement that was all across the country. You know what I mean? You had people that were like, enough is enough, and here we are now, and it's only gotten worse. It's all relative or subjective potentially, but, exponentially worse in terms of each of the last, however many, you could go far as back as you want. Every single president, it just gets worse and worse. The whether it's a slow creep or a sprint towards fascism and authoritarianism, we are now at the point where the people that rule this country are literally, and I feel like I'm completely safe to say this because it's completely out there in the public sphere at this time. But we have literal people literally that have ran, and some of them continue to run, human trafficking rings, child trafficking rings, in charge, literally completely ignoring the law, not even, having to get Congress to approve anything that they're doing. They're just running a complete muck. And the world is looking at this on the world. We were speaking, Rick, you probably heard me do this. I'll go into my little diatribes, I'll be talking about the world and stuff. But let's bring it back to what you were talking about here. Any, items you wanted to bring up, because we're still talking about the students and your work. And there's a few things I specifically, before the end of the show, I wanted to have you drop information on how students can get involved with SDS, how folks can get involved with the Freedom Road Socialist Organization, and how folks can get involved with the Humboldt Anti-War Committee and any other endeavors that you feel like people need to be knowing about, organizing alongside. We got, to my understanding, we got another No Kings protest coming up, March 28th, unless I'm wrong. It's gonna be another big one. You know, I'm just, me, man. I like to I'll say it how it is, man. And so, I'll put my 2 cents in. I don't really like seeing the Humboldt County Democrats, in there in that list of, people involved with it, because I feel like there's some status quo milk toasty type of people, you know what I mean? But on the flip side, we just got to make sure that they don't run the thing. Yeah. You know what I mean? We'll take the numbers, but they don't get to run it. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, shoot. You know what? I'm gonna real quick. I know when you were talking about the Epstein class and all that stuff, and I just wanted to touch on it because it actually does kind of tie into this a bit, in that, like, back in 2023, there was a lawsuit that was going on at Cal Poly Humboldt over accessibility, issues they still have not dealt with. And they hired an attorney from Clyde & Co. And this attorney, she, like, that whole company basically is like this. But her in particular, too, Allison Bunham, I believe it's pronounced. She, on her, summary page, she prides herself on defending sexual predators and stuff. So this is really like the lawyers of the Epstein class brought to Humboldt to fight students dealing with accessibility issues. Like, there are ties there, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, there are real material ties there between these things, and it's really important to know that, like, these top-notch, like, corporate attorneys and stuff, they're the ones who are defending the predators, and they're the ones defending the Cal Poly Humboldt administration in this lawsuit that happened,
That's crazy.
Yeah. A friend, showed me that information like a week ago, and I've just been digging through it, and I was like, this checks out. Of course, but
we get, and that's the thing is, because I feel like the students here, again, it goes back to, it's just related to some of the praises that I have given the students that did the occupation 2 years ago, and the students that did the sit-ins in the last month, like, that's the forefront. Again, like I was saying, that's the North Star of anti-imperialist activism, and so that's, like, at the forefront of what was happening. The students made global headlines with 2 years ago. You know what I mean? And so that scares them. That scares the status quo, the powers that protect the status quo, and they're going to send their highest paid, highest priced, highest billable hours goons to and that's the horrible part, is that these are like learned individuals. Like, lawyers are typically not dummies. You have to have some level of intelligence to pass the bar exam. I want to hope. I haven't done it, but I'm estimating. You know what I mean? So they're not dummies, but but with that, field, you don't really, it's there's shadiness all around. You don't have, there's the good ones, like in anything, there's the good ones, and then there's the bad ones, and even if they're good, they might be paid to be bad, and that's their job. Maybe they displace themselves, a little Severance style action where they just put a wall up against what they're doing, but they're doing bad out there. And so those people, anybody's protecting that Epstein class, that's bad, super bad news, And then to have those same people, and it goes along the lines of, right, like, you have that lack of morality, to actually, continue to do that wrong and bad, and suppress the rights of students. Like, that's wild, man. Clyde & Co. I didn't know that, That's good to know.
Yeah.
Shout out to all the people that, have their eyes open and on all of this type of stuff. You know what I mean? Like they because until I don't like to I'm not a fan of Obama, so I don't like to quote him. But sunlight is the best disinfectant was one of his quotes. You know what I mean? I mean, maybe he didn't even write that, or I mean, I don't know. But that is we have to keep our eyes open. Otherwise, again, they're gonna control the narrative. You know what I mean? And so I don't even. And so with you, for you with your charges, man, I feel like there. I think the best plan. I'm not your lawyer. I couldn't say what to do, but I feel like, man, the longer this gets dragged out, the less and less likely that it'll be for them to hold anything, and for the more likely it'll be that they drop the charges like they did for our friends 2 years ago. You know what I mean? So you know what I mean. Like I feel like you've got a really. I feel like you've got a chance with this to make them look really dumb.
Oh yeah.
And then it's all about actually, in some kind of level in the local community, like letting people know about that. Their best hope will be if charges, if and when the charges all do get dropped, that nobody says anything about it, and that it doesn't, like let's say hit the papers. But if I know you well, I think you're going to be very vocal about letting the community know all these charges ended up getting dropped, and I'm praying for a counterclaim, a countersuit against, what they've said and what they've done here, you know what I mean? So that way it can cost them some chips, you know what I mean? They need to pay up. It's not right, and they can't continue to do this. And on some level, it's going to take this, them, the system, the status quo, them losing coast to coast, and the students seeing that coast to coast and getting reinvigorated. Because again, I really appreciate what you were saying a few minutes ago, like Palestine has, you know what I mean? Like Palestine, from my understanding, like now that, this conflict is going on in the region, the Zionists are like, well, this is our opportunity to just go nuts. And, we're getting beat by, our adversaries. So we're going to continue to be a bully, or an even worse bully to the people that we can bully, people that are literally in an open air concentration, an open air prison. You know what I mean? They're like, well, they can't defend themselves, so let's push the borders in further and further in Gaza. You know what I mean? Like, let's push Lebanon. And, fortunately, we've got Hezbollah fighting back hard against them. You know what I mean? Like, because they're running amok. And, and they would love for Palestine to just be out of the media, out of the picture. I can't say, this is just the information I get. But to my understanding, so bombs started dropping in West Asia on February 28th. On March 1st, searches regarding the Epstein files went down 95%. So the people that have said, whether it's just, Mein Trumpf or whoever else involved with controlling things, controlling media, controlling the narrative, that they were using this war as a distraction, they were basically proven correct. And for me, I can't speculate on all this. I'd love to, but I can't speculate on everything. It's just a matter of if Mein Trumpf was doing this to distract people from the Epstein files and took this country into that war and conflict that is now going on, like that was one of the worst moves in this country's history, because it has backfired big time, man. Like, it's not looking good for the colonizers and the Western Empire and their allies over there in West Asia right now. It's not a good look. They're not looking like they're, regardless of how whatever Trump's saying that, we've decapitated, we're, completely destroying the capability of Iran over there and everything like that. I don't know that that's necessarily that true. Like, I think that's completely propaganda, to keep his side, his base up under him. Yeah. And it's not looking good for them, man. And so, but on the flip side, and I said this in a video recently, but this adds to the fact that we need to keep our friends, our brothers and sisters in Palestine in our hearts and in our minds. But not just that, but people that have the capability to donate to families and to support families. Like, now is a more important time than ever almost, because they've got it really bad right now. I mean, I think that food is completely stopped. Like, they've stopped off like all trucks coming in, and famine was a worry over the last 2 years, like at least a few times, and now it's like it's a real concern, and we just can't, I know that there's conflict and gas prices are up, and and so then people start to clutch their pearls and everything like that. But the people that do have ability to support our brothers and sisters in Palestine, now is the time. It is so interconnected, because we're seeing Dubai and the United Arab Emirates get bombed a lot by Iran. And as we've seen, they have been almost, if not as bad as the Zionists with their imperialist type, just their funding of just horrible things across the globe, including Sudan. The UAE is instrumental in supplying arms to the RSF in Sudan, who they've been causing a lot of the conflict there. So it's all interconnected, and so just for me, it's been a little, people might not like hearing this. I'm entitled to say what I say, but it's been a little invigorating to see the people that have caused so much pain and suffering to our brothers and sisters in Palestine get some comeuppance. I'm not for, I'm not going to sit here and revel and, dance and scream at the top of my lungs in praise for, people getting destroyed and killed in Tel Aviv and in occupied Palestine and stuff. But, on some kind of level, I mean, I don't control it. And, I can't cuss on this program, but FAFO. I mean, you know what I mean? Karma's a bee. You know what I mean? And so, it's been interesting, and it all goes back to, us here inside the imperial core have more power than we realize, and we just don't realize it, and we're seeing in Europe, there's the Italians, workers, dock workers, etc. They're fighting back. They're stopping trains. I saw in the last couple days. Like, they are really trying hard to stop the flow of arms and munitions. Like, I'm not seeing the activation on that same level like I see in Italy and like France or the UK or Germany. I do see activation there, and I'm not denigrating the people that are activating, because shout out to anybody who is doing the work in those those and our colonizer countries to stop some of this. You know what I mean? We just have to find, like you said earlier, that solidarity to just continue to put the pressure, and now is a bit of the time where, I mean, like, we're seeing the Western Empire, trip and fall, and hegemony kind of, the military dominance of NATO and of the United States. It's being checked. It's being brought into question, and they're in a sense at their weakest. I mean, even in terms of militarily, straight up, like, they're having to use a lot of interceptor missiles. They're running out of interceptors to intercept all the missiles coming from Iran and Hezbollah, and and eventually Yemen's going to get into the fight. They're running low on interceptors. So this is that time where they're at their bit of a weakest. Babylon is at its weakest, and so now is the time to, rather than just be subdued and oh shoot, well gas prices are super high. Now is the time to, and that sucks. I'm not saying it doesn't suck. I mean, I'm driving less because of it. We all have considerations. We all got to take, care of our, the pocketbook and make sure that, like we're not, overextending ourselves, but we do have to do what we can, And so, just like, the folks that came together locally for these No Kings protests, we're about to have another one, I just want folks to think about it. In between that last No Kings protest, I think August or so, I may be wrong about that. I think there was one after August, maybe October, November. I may be wrong about that. But since the last No Kings protest and the upcoming No Kings protest, I just encourage folks to think, like, what have you done to support our community? What have you done to support our brothers and sisters that need even just our moral support to say, because the Palestinians do look and see like, okay, those people are like doing what's right. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and they care about that. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, so like, what have you done? What have we done as a community? Shout out to, there's people that are still doing the anti-war work in the community. You know what I mean? Holding these local governments, accountable for doing at least what they can do, which in the least is making a statement that goes up to the federal governments and everything like that. There's still people in the community doing that work. There's still people in the community with Foods Not Bombs activating every single week. There's our friends again with Centro del Pueblo. There's I don't want to say plenty, but there's I think it is. There's plenty of places that if you haven't been activating since whatever last time period, last No Kings or what have you, there's places that you can go to put in, I have these higher standards for people and I say put in 5 hours, put in 10 hours or more. But even if you can only put in 2 to 3 to 4 hours a month, like that's meaningful. Go and help, people with Foods Not Bombs, cook for some people in the local community. You know what I mean? And so with all that being said, what I wanted to ask you a few things. So what do you see happening with the local community in terms of, you are going to be graduating soon in a few months. And so I can't say for sure. I don't know if you're planning on leaving the area or staying, but there's going to be the people that are going to be here activating. There's going to be the students that are still activating. SDS is, let me tell the administration, SDS is not going away, no matter how much they would like to think, and they want to try to focus on you and think that you're, like they can, have you think of you as the like only representative of SDS. SDS is not going away. The YDSA is not going away. Student activists are not going away, especially at this school. It's a part of the tradition of the school. Yeah. And so where do you see things going for the students at Cal Poly in terms of activism on campus and activating off of campus? Where do you see things going, and where would you want to see things go?
Well, I guess the first thing is I don't even know if I'll be graduating at this point. It seems like they're pushing for expulsion, so we'll see how that all even turns out. But, I don't plan on leaving the community anytime soon, within the next couple of years at least. So I'll be around. But when it comes to student activism, here's a major barrier that I've seen, and it's the reason why the administrators are able to think that, oh, well, we can just get rid of Rick. It's that a lot of people, are rightfully worried to put their face out there because of the repercussions and the attacks and everything. And I definitely understand that, I understand why people would feel that way. But I think it's really important that we have people who are willing to put their face out there and to be those public-facing figures for the student movement. And I think, honestly, knowing the people that I do in the student movement now, knowing the direction that they're heading, once I'm not that person, there's going to be more of those people. It's not going away. The people who are there are very activated. If anything, everything that's happened around this has only activated them more. Now They're more galvanized. Now they want to do even more. Now they're feeling even more justified in their actions. And the administration has only amplified that with their attacks on me. So I don't see it going anywhere. I see it growing, if anything. I think that I came in in an interesting time where there were all these new organizations starting up and this kind of new movement that started. And a lot of that fizzled out. But now there's like this new wave coming in again of these new students who are just ready to go and ready to take action. And I'm seeing them grow rapidly. And so I have all the faith in the world in them. These are some extremely smart people. These are people who know what's right, know what's wrong, and they know what action they're going to have to take to make real change. And I have the utmost confidence in them. And when when it comes to the people, you were talking about, like, we've got people who come to I feel like they just come to the next No Kings thing and then the next No King. But yeah, I really think it is important to kind of channel, and I'm glad they're coming to that. I'm glad they are. But it's really important to also, support these other organizations who are doing consistent work in the community. And to, even if it's just an hour, like, we need that hour. Right. We need more help. Like, all of our orgs could use more assistance. So really, like, anything that they can do and really helping to build up that united front in our community and that mutual support and solidarity. I think it's crucial. And something, I see it a lot. Where there's a lot of people who may be like they're concerned about more radical activism, and I get why they might feel that way, but I think people really do need to start understanding that, like, they didn't attack me to this extent because I wasn't a threat. They did it because they viewed this type of activism, they viewed these types of action as the biggest threat to their power. They viewed it as the thing that could actually shake that structure and create change. If it wasn't, they wouldn't have thrown 4 felony charges at me and kidnapped me from my damn house. Oh, I can't. And kidnapped me from my house. Yeah. So it's really, like, and there's all kinds of important stuff though, right? Not that type of action is not the only thing that matters. You have to have the community building. You have to have the support networks. You have to have all of that stuff as well. But you need to have that radical element if you want to really change things and to really protect people even. And so I encourage more people to become more comfortable with that and to understand it. And for my friends who are doing that type of activism, who are masking themselves and all of that, I respect that. But I would say that, from my perspective, I think that when we let the people know who we are, when we let them know why we're doing this, what we're about, they can recognize us, then they're more willing to fight with us in mass. They're more willing to support us in our efforts. And yeah, it's risky. I'm not here to say that it isn't. I mean, I've been through a lot already, but if we're not willing to take risks, then what are we doing? Because they're going to keep on escalating things with us. They're going to keep cracking down on us. They're going to keep attacking us. And we need more people who are willing to speak out. We need more people who are willing to get involved in this work and to organize and to take action, not less. And if we let them scare us into submission, or if they let them separate us from the people, then we're letting them weaken us a lot of the time. And there's certainly a place for that type of thing too. I'm not here to say that there isn't, but we need, if we're going to have that, we also need to have the public facing too. We have to. And so I encourage more people, to stand up and to fight back. And I hope that through this case, I plan to win. I plan to fight. And, I can't comment on all of the specifics. Obviously, my lawyer would kill me. But I plan to fight to the fullest extent of my power, and I plan to win. And I can only hope that when people see that victory, because I will be extremely loud about it, that it will help them realize that, wait a minute, maybe they're not as strong as we thought. Maybe they aren't as powerful as we thought. Maybe we can take the fight to them in the public sphere, because that's the thing that terrifies them.
Mm-hmm. It is going to truly invigorate our student activist friends when these charges get dropped. That is going to I feel like that is going to make some of them want and be willing to take off the mask. And I'm not saying that to just try to say that that's the badge of honor for anybody who does want to protect themselves or anybody that might be more vulnerable. I'm saying, like, it is going to invigorate people when the charges get dropped and they're like, oh, we can't let them do this again. We can't even like create a situation where they're going to even try to pull this. We're going to have our eyes open. We're going to have cameras out. We're going to have, and then we're a layer of insulation of people, legal observers and otherwise, protecting the activists, and we're going to have, legal representation on, like, ready to call, you know what I mean? Folks put the NLG number, they write it on their arm sometimes when they're going to protest, you know what I mean? Like doing those things that are going to help protect the student activists because, really if you really want to like get a sense of like what's right and the right thing to do, all you really have to do is look at student activists, like the student activists are really the forefront. Yeah, there's a few, like status quo or people with some bad mentality, Zionist or otherwise. Yeah, they're out there. You know what I mean? I remember when 2 years ago went down and I just went onto the campus to just, it was when the campus was like locked down and there was like nobody on campus. I just, took my scooter to just kind of, just like scoot around and see like what was going on and everything like that. And there were some people, and I had my keffiyeh on and everything like that. And there were some people that gave some looks and all this and all that and everything like that. I get it. Nobody, even student as a demographic, nobody's a monolith, even students. You're going to have some of those, anti-minded people that are going to be against what's right. But in general, if you want to know what's right and have, again, a bit of a North Star to lead you on what is right, you really just have to listen to and look at what student activists are doing, and I couldn't say that it would happen. What I'm wondering, and, because we're all under this, we get what we get through the internet and we get what we get through the media and everything like that. But I just think, and I've seen mainly through SDS, national SDS and chapters of SDS, this is happening across the country where students are still fighting and these universities are still suppressing and repressing and violating students' rights in all kinds of different ways. So big time shout out to SDS, man, because, like the student movement is, like SDS is really leading the way. And I may make a few people mad when I say this, but I feel like SDS is the modern iteration of like the SNCC, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. That was Kwame Ture and a bunch of other black activists back in, the 50s and the 60s that, led the way with coordinating on a student level, student activism, and that was for civil rights back then, you know what I mean? And so I feel like this is a modern day iteration of that same type of energy, that same type of movement. And SDS as a national organization, there's I know that there's other YDSAs and stuff like that, but SDS is really kind of the main galvanizing, the forefront of the student movement, you know what I mean? And so, big time shout out to SDS. I keep my eye on that national SDS page and I'm seeing it, I'm sure you've seen it too, you know what I mean? Like these universities are not, it's wild. They're not doing right by the students, man. And, and I think it's because, again, they know that the students are always at the forefront of what's right. The students are the ones that are going to have power in this society, in generation ahead, or, in years ahead of us. And so they know that these are the people that they need to try to get used to being suppressed now. Like, let's set the precedent of suppressing them and repressing their rights and, oppressing them and everything like that. They want to set that in motion to get that like in the students' heads and everything. But I feel like the generations coming up, man, I feel like, like they're ready for the fight.
Yeah, with SDS National, it's when you look at what's happening with them, like with SDS, it's really they're ready to fight. that's the thing. Like, they're ready to go out there, do the public-facing work, fight the university on these things, and just be uncompromisingly, fighting for these things. You see it all the time. Like, SDS has, like, as a national body, has become like this expert organization in defense work and protecting students and putting pressure on universities, because we're seeing that, like you said, that same response everywhere, where we're all over the country, we're fighting on all these different universities for similar battles, but we're seeing this repression everywhere in response. So, when you're following the SDS national page, it's like regular that you see call into this jail, call into this place, call into here, call this university admin. We're always just flooding them with calls, getting more and more support from people. We have like a vast network of organizations that we're connected to now who all have similar goals. And it's just the slow burn of the building of that larger network, that larger solidarity across the country. And I would say it's it started as a slow burn, but it's escalated a lot, in recent years with the increased repression. We're seeing more and more people who are willing to fight. And really, I view SDS as really like the frontline fighters in any place that they are in the student movement. And I have the utmost respect for that. And when I got into it, I didn't even realize it was to that extent. I was like, I want change on my campus. Like, this is the organization to do that. And then I very quickly learned and realized, like, oh, this is a much sharper battle than I thought it was. Because, you go to college and you think like, oh, well, they're going to understand more here. It won't be that same kind of level of repression. No, it's actually very, very sharp repression. And the university administrators actually have significant power over the students, which only intensifies that struggle, because they will try to use that power to intimidate and dissuade you and to just put you into submission. And so the fights are much sharper than you would anticipate. So I've learned a lot from that. And I think that the student movement now is even stronger in a lot of ways. Like, the fighters who have stayed are like veterans at this point, like, they know how the universities operate. They know what's up. They know what tactics work, and they're ready for the fight ahead. So it's really inspiring to see what everyone's doing nationally. And even for me, here on the local level, like, I honestly, first of all, shout out to everyone in the community who came through for me. The team of people came together right away to start fighting to get me out of jail. Taking care of my cats, taking care of stuff in my house, making sure things were in order in case the police raided it. Like, that meant the world to me. And, and beyond that, like, national SCS and these national orgs jumped into action as well and just started, like, going to work to fight for me immediately. And that kind of solidarity, that's the stuff that gives me hope. When we see these crackdowns, we see this far right power structure, taking more and more, and you watch the news cycle, and it can really be demoralizing. But then you see the solidarity that comes through when it counts. You see these organizations that are willing to do whatever it takes to fight for what's right. And that is what keeps me invigorated. And that's what really brings hope back to me. And so I'm so thankful for all of that. And I'm ready to fight. I think the university, they thought that they were going to break me. I think they thought they could put me in jail and I would just panic. And I think they thought that was going to be enough. And they were sorely mistaken, because what did I do when I was in there? All I did was thought about how I'm going to fight them when I get out of there. I just waited and waited, and here I am now. And so
their worst nightmare. Yeah,
and it's going to take a lot more than that. And something else I said this to a couple reporters, I think, as well. When first of all, for me, the way that I perceive this is, they're trying to bring the boot down full force, but they don't know how to use the boot. And the second thing is, like, when you try to crack down like that, when you try to repressively crack down on people, who are just fighting for just causes and who are just like trying to have their voices heard, when you respond with these crackdowns, what you end up doing is you end up turning more people against you. You can't just suppress free speech, and you can't just suppress a just cause with the boot. You only galvanize the movement and get more people against you. And I think that's what they're learning the hard way, and that's that's what I think we're going to see moving forward with this whole thing. It's just more and more support and more people fighting for something better. And we have a big fight ahead of us because this whole CSU system is so corrupt. And like a rumor I've been hearing from multiple people now is that the governor's office is involved, where they're saying like, building occupations are the red line, Palestine type stuff. It can't happen. So we need to take them down is what I'm hearing. And so that goes down to the CSU Board of Trustees, and that goes down to the admin. It's like, gloves are off. Use every tactic at your disposal to destroy them, Mm-hmm. And I think that's what this is. And They think that they can just shut it down. And so it speaks to like how undemocratic things are. It speaks to where like how like the larger government and its right-wing policy, impact every aspect of even the education system and the way that manifests itself. So we're dealing with a lot of repression here, and we're dealing with, people who are unified in bringing that repression to us. But guess what? There's way more of us than there are of them. And when we push together, when we have people power, we can beat them.
That's right. 100%. No, I completely agree, Rick. I want to make sure, because we got less than 5 minutes, what I want to make sure we do. So what we can't do on the radio show, with this being an FCC and non-commercial, we can't give a call to action to like say, okay, I want you to go and do this in terms of I want you to go. I can't say I want you to go and donate to Rick's, GoFundMe. But what we can do is we can let the people know what exists. And what I'm hoping is as easy, it might be as easy as, because giving a long web URL over the radio doesn't translate well to get people to actually go to it. Mm-hmm. But maybe potentially what folks can do is, if you don't already, if you're able to, and you may already have it, I just haven't looked on like your specific Instagram page, but you can put a link on your Instagram page. If you put the link to your Chuffed, the fundraiser for your legal defense costs, on your Instagram page, even if they're not your friend, they will see that link. And so do you want to drop your Instagram handle so that way people can quickly and easily potentially go to your Instagram page and then find your donation link on your page? Like, let them know what your Instagram handle is.
Yeah, it's all on the SDS Humboldt one, so that'd probably be the best
sweet.
way.
There we go.
You just go to STS_Humboldt, and there's everything there. And also, if you just Google Rick Toledo Legal Defense, it'll pop up. It's the first thing on Google. So
there we go. Boom.
My name, Rick Toledo Legal Defense. You'll get it. It's there. And yeah, that's. Well, I've got. They're throwing multiple cases at me, right? Like, I've got the criminal case. They're doing a restraining order case, and then there's a conduct case. They're trying to use lawfare basically to overwhelm me. So I need all the support that I can get so I can continue to fight this, and so I can fight them for damages as well.
Right. Because that workplace violence restraining order case, again, so I'm not mentioning names, but there's some real snowflakey type of, just energy behind that, and I use that in a way to basically denigrate the entire process and the people involved with making these claims, because that right there has been, I feel like, and I may be wrong on this, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's been one of the factors involved with you losing your job.
Yeah,
on campus, so that's wrong. And then we got the California Attorney General himself, Rob Bonta, is behind those charges and supporting that push for that WVRO, that workplace violence restraining order. And so that that's all wrong, like that, And so again, that goes to what you were just saying. It goes to the top, the upper echelons of the state, that where these directives are coming down, and they are, what trickles. Positive finances for people, that's not what trickles down. The wealth does not trickle down. fascism, authoritarianism, repression, violence against the people. That's what trickles down. And we're literally seeing that right now with how the state is operating with the California Attorney General supporting that process. And so I'm hoping, and I'm gonna be waiting to see. I'm hoping that that gets dropped, completely gets dropped, so that way you're able to continue. I appreciate you bringing up earlier that they are trying to not let you graduate. I feel like that's a goal of the process as well. Yes. And so I want to see that WVRO get dropped, all these 4 charges get dropped, and then reinstate you for the rest of the time of your tenure as a student at Cal Poly. That's the direction I want to see that. Thank you for dropping SDS's Instagrams. That way people, or just Googling Rick Toledo legal defense, so that way they can they have the information they need. I can't tell them what to do, but now y'all have the information you need to find what you want and go out there and you know what I mean. Like that way you have the opportunity to support Rick. And yeah, Rick, I'm just wishing you the best with all of it, with the entire process. I am going to be dropping, and it takes me a little while longer when I have to kind of edit different podcast episodes. That's what slows it down. Like if this episode, like this one we did tonight, like this went like perfectly fine. There's like nothing to edit in this thing at all. Like this one, like as soon as I save this thing, it's going to be ready to drop. Mm-hmm. But I want to honor our friends that came in on the last show, and I want to get that Occupy Cal Poly episode dropped from the last recording. Mm-hmm. And then after that drops on the Hip Hop Humboldt podcast, we're going to be dropping a part 2 this 2 hours that we spent right now with you, Rick, and talking with you here, and get that dropped on the Hip Hop Humboldt podcast, and then it's going to be out there forever for folks to come back to. So that way, too, when you're talking and when our friends out there, students are talking to other students that are coming to this area or other students anywhere to get an account of this is what happened in Humboldt County. This is now Humboldt County history. They can't go back on it now. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And the school's going to end up looking real dumb, and the students need to see and hear what happened, and so we're going to have this history archived in the podcast. And thank you again, Rick, for coming in, because this is now, you know what I mean? Like, this is multiple hours of your life and your time that you have given to the community to talk about these things. Multiple hours, literally hours of your time and life that you gave to have to go in on these trumped up bogus charges, and so I'm hoping, that you get recompensated for all the wrongs that they've done to you, man. And it's just always good to see you in general. You know what I mean? I'm glad to see you, that you're upright. You know what I mean? A lesser man would, be crouched over. You're not. You're upright with this. You're ready to fight them. You know what I mean? That's the energy that we got to keep as a community. Also, too, because we do have about another minute and a half or so. Yeah. But from what I saw, just because I'm, friends with the person who runs the Humboldt Progressive Democrats, I think you're going to be at the Humboldt Progressive Democrat meeting on Wednesday, unless I'm wrong, talking to them. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I'll be at the No Kings 2 speaking. I'm going to be doing a little tour around.
Heck yeah. Letting people know what it is. You know what I mean? No, that's what we got to do. Like I said, you're upright about it, and you're doing what's right. You're speaking out against it, because it could be, you know what I mean? Like, oh well, if you didn't, then that would, in a sense, be them winning.
Yes,
that's what they want. And we can't give them what they want.
Never.
Heck yeah.
Never.
Heck yeah, Rick. Hey, thank you again, man, so much for coming in.
Thank you.
And I appreciate every single one of y'all for tuning in to the Hip Hop Humboldt radio show. Tune in every other Saturday, 8 p.m. on humboldthotair.org or 94.7 FM. I am going to take it out with, we're going to do some more. You know me, I love the low key, so we're going to do some low key. We're going to have a little bit of representing the people in Palestine. And so let's get some good low key on here. Let's do some long live Palestine. Keep Palestine, our brothers and sisters in Palestine, in your hearts and minds. Thank y'all for tuning in, and until next time, y'all.